with you on over the course of the school. Take a look at the tape as well as your chart from time to time just to stay on track. Fundamentally, I think you accepted the change fairly well with the grip. Just make sure you monitor that. Also, I would say make sure you maintain your grip pressure. And all that means is just to hold on to the club consistently, as you well know. But also monitor the other fundamentals and always have alignment source when you set up to hit your shots. Just lay a golf club down right there in front of you and try to have the ball probably no more than about 6 to 8 inches away from it. Always practice with something like this. As far as the swing itself goes, as you know, we need both the arms to go back and not just the left. When you hit shots in that split grip, that really activates the right side of your body. Just make sure you're splitting your hands about 1/4 to 1/2 inch. And when you do make the swings, your feeling is not only the right arm goes back, but the right shoulder, especially if you're leaving them weakened to the right. Once your ball begins to go to the left, then that's when we need to get the legs picking up the pace. And that's something that we told you fairly soon in the golf school, which is a good thing. But the drill we like for you to activate that lower body is the pre-impact drill. Just set your club to the ball. Motion the hips, knees, and legs forward, Brad. Make sure your right knee's working towards the ball, the right heel's coming up off the ground slightly. Come back to the set position. Then make your swing back and through, and you should get a good feeling that the sequence of your downswing started better and that we keep moving through with the lower body, finishing ultimately with the hips facing the target. Work a lot of 1/2 and 3/4 length golf swings as well, just to feel these changes incrementally as well, Brad. But practice the tips, work on the drills. Shouldn't have any problem at all. You got a great golf swing. And by the way, good luck with your golf season next year. And if you have any questions, by all means, get on the computer and contact us. We'll be more than happy to help you out and stay a part of your game. Also, don't neglect the short game. A lot of pitching, chipping, and putting. That's where you're going to really need to work as well to get to the next level. So practice those areas just as much as your full swing. We had a great time with you, and we look forward to seeing you again next year for further improvement. Fast forward the tape, and you'll get a review of the whole school. Thanks a lot. and thank you for coming to the Academy of Golf Dynamics. From all of us here at the school, we want to thank you for your attendance. Over the next 30 minutes, you're going to get a comprehensive review of all areas of the game. We'll go through putting, chipping, pitching, full swing, and sand play. And we recommend that you look at the tape from time to time just to stay on track and sharp in all areas of the game. Without any further ado, we're going to let Kyle show us some putting.
Hi, I'm going to go over your putting fundamentals with you and some basics you need to cover in your setup. First of all, with your grip, you want to make sure the club is in the palm of your hands. Okay, in the palm of both hands where your thumbs are going down the center of the shaft. Alright, now what that does is it gets the club in line with your arms so that your shoulders, your arms, and your putter all swing together as a unit. So you don't have a lot of extra movement in your stroke, everything's working together. You do want to stay relaxed with everything, but you do want it working together as a unit. Very simple, very efficient. So that grip is very important there. Second thing, with your ball position, you want to play it slightly forward in your stance. This will help ensure that you hit the putt a little bit on the upstroke, so that ball's rolling from the very start. Okay? Third main thing with your setup, when you set up to the ball, try to get a distance from the ball where your eyes are over the ball. Okay, now if I were too close, my eyes would be on the outside of my target line. If I were too far from the ball, my eyes would be on the inside of the target line. So I want to get a distance where my eyes are over the target line. If you're a little too far from the ball where your eyes are on the inside, that's okay. The only place you don't want your eyes are on the outside of the target line. Okay, so those are the three main points in your setup. After that, I would say get comfortable. You know, you want to be comfortable when you putt, that is important. But take care of those couple of basics there, and that will help your putting quite a bit. Your setup is a big part of your putt. Now, the last thing here, as far as your stroke goes, a couple of things to remember. Number one, you want your stroke to stay even length and even pace back and through. Okay? And if you do that, judging distance will be a ton easier. So the only thing that ever changes when you hit a putt a different distance is the length of your stroke back and through. Okay? The other thing I would say is, and I touched on this a little bit with your setup, when you make your stroke, you want your shoulders, arms, and putter all working together as a unit. You can see my legs and my head stay very still. The only thing moving here are my shoulders, my arms, and my putter as a unit, back and through. Okay, so the less movement you have, the better off you are. Okay, and what I would do is when you practice back home, practice some putts, different length putts for distance, you know, before you go play. Practice some short putts to help you see the ball going in the hole. And those things will help your putt even if you putt for 5 or 10 minutes. So work on those keys and those basics, and Randy's going to talk to you a little bit about some chipping.
Okay, we're going to go over some chipping here, and as we say during the golf school, how you determine when to chip the golf ball is if you can't putt. And then if you can't putt, we chip, and then if you can't chip it, then it turns into more of a pitch. And obviously that has to do with where your ball is in relation to the green. As far as the setup and the fundamentals go though, we recommend that you set up very similar to how you would putt. And as Kyle told us before, we like for the club to be situated a little more in the palms. That way you create a little more of a straight line or angle here with your forearms in the club. And I would say you're keeping the club in the palms so you don't create any wrist action. Remember, when that club is situated more in the lifeline there and the thumbs are down the center of the shaft, you're going to be a lot more accurate with your chips as well as your putts because you're not creating any loft, nor are you decreasing the loft. I would say as far as the other setup keys, we do want your eyes over the golf ball in this case. As Kyle mentioned before, eye alignment over the ball or slightly to the inside is what you're looking for. And in this case, when you do that with your club, you've now brought the club to more of an upright position.
where now the heel of the ground or the club has got a little air between it, and you're actually making contact a little more towards the toe of your club. And this is imperative that you set up this way so that you create a more consistent roll with your shot. Remember, when that club's resting naturally, you actually bring the sweet spot into play, and now the ball can simply hop off there or create backspin, which you don't want. You're actually trying to create a little more of an overspin situation by hitting it a little more towards the toe. Another feature that'll occur when you do raise your club up is that you'll now use the top edge of your club for alignment purposes because you've taken the leading edge out of it by raising the heel up off the ground. Once again, you make these setup changes to get the ball rolling just as much like a putt as possible. And I'll say the last couple of things you got to look for as far as your arms. You need to make sure that once you do set up to the ball, it is slightly back of center here, but now your arms and your chest, or your hands and your chest, are a little more ahead of the ball at address. That's going to ensure that you're making contact, I would say, more at the golf ball. Last but not least, you want to make sure that when you do favor your weight on your left side and your hands and arms are ahead, that you keep the relationship with the bent left forearm and a slightly hinged right wrist the same throughout the stroke. That's going to make sure that the club never changes its loft. I would say, as far as the stroke itself goes, it's very similar to a putt. Just feel like you're making a putt with whatever club you choose. I'll hit a couple here for you just to show you here that you want to make it just like a putt. Play the ball slightly back in your stance, weight left, just simply brush the grass. No matter what golf club you use, whether it's your 8 or 9 iron, or let's say your 5 or 6 iron, the roll is going to be the same. All you're looking to do is to either make a putt with the club that you've chosen, or try to hit the spot maybe about 1 or 2 steps onto the green that we spoke about during the school, which will now lead me to the ratio system. One thing we feel is that you should be open to all options with your clubs as far as the selection process goes around the green. Don't feel restricted just to one club. And that system does entail a little bit of math. And how it works is you'll count the number of steps it takes you to get from where your ball is to about 1 or 2 steps onto the green. You keep that number. You then begin another number where you count the number of steps to where you stepped on to the hole. And at that point, after you get those 2 numbers from where you stepped from your ball to the green and then the green to the pin, you divide the first number into the second number. At that point, you'll now subtract that product that you got from that particular problem there from 12, and that'll give you the club selection right there. So for instance, if I had a ball that was situated 2 steps off the green, and then I had, let's say, 8 steps to the pin, what I would do is I'd divide 2 into 8, which is 4, and 4 from 12 would be the 8 iron. And that's how you choose your club. And I would say too, make sure that you're using the speed of the greens, whether it's uphill or downhill, to help you with that process as well. There'll be cases or situations where you may need to take a little more club if it's going uphill, or a little more lofted club or less club if it's going downhill. I think the main thing we want you to know is be open to all clubs. Don't feel restricted just to one club. Practice these tips and you'll have no problem with your chips when you get out there and play. Now Kyle's going to show us some pitch shots.
I'm going to go over your pitch shot fundamentals and basics with you. And just remember, with this shot, basically all it is a small version of your full swing. So your setup and everything else is the same. Basically the only difference here is the swing is a little shorter. Now there is one slight adjustment in your setup that you're going to make. And anytime you're making a less than full swing, remember you want to have a little bit of weight on your front foot. I always try to feel like I have about 60% of my weight on my left foot. Okay, and that just ensures that I'm not doing a lot of moving around on these shorter swings. I'm staying nice and centered there. When I make these shorter swings, I don't want to have a lot of movement. Okay. Now, as far as your swing goes, there's a couple of things here that are key to hitting a good pitch shot. Number one is remember to allow the club to open. So when you swing the club back to waist high, the toe of the club points in the air. That's crucial to hitting a good pitch shot. If you see somebody that has trouble hitting pitch shots, most likely they bring the club back closed. And if you watch it, it doesn't matter if it's a tour player or a total beginner. If they bring that club back closed, you can bet they have trouble hitting pitch shots. So what you want to remember is just allow the club to open there on your way back so that at waist high the toe of the club points up. And what that does is when the toe of the club's pointing up at waist high, now at shoulder high the shaft is at the same angle it was sitting at address. Now all it takes to hit the ball is gravity. Okay, that also utilizes the bounce on the bottom of your sand wedge, so you can hit shots off poor lies. A second key I would say is when you hit this shot, make sure you're not trying to be too careful with it. A big mistake we see with students that come through our school to start off with is they try to be too perfect with a shot. Remember, you've got a club with a lot of loft on it and you've got bounce on the bottom. That bounce gives you a little leeway for mistakes. Okay, so you don't have to be perfect with a shot. Get set up to the ball. You can see I've set a tee down behind the ball, about an inch behind the ball. Most tour players, using them as an example, when they hit a pitch shot, they make contact about right there on an average pitch shot. So I'm going to set up, ball's in the middle of my stance. I've got a little weight on my left foot. Now when I hit this shot, I'm going to make contact about where that tee is. Okay? And so you don't have to be real careful with a shot. I would say the less careful you are, to a point obviously, the better off you'll be. It's because you relax and make a good swing. Okay? The last thing I would say is when you hit this shot, a lot like your putting stroke, try to have your swing the same length and the same pace back and through. That's important because a lot like your putting stroke, the length of your swing is what determines how far you hit the shot. A lot of times when people have a little trouble with this shot, they try to accelerate, hit it harder, or hit it easier. Remember, keep your pace about the same, even back and through, but just let the length of your swing determine how far you hit the ball. So work on these keys and these fundamentals, and obviously hit a lot of pitch shots around the green when you're practicing. Spend a lot of time with this club, a lot of time with your putting, and you'll see a lot of improvement in your short game. And this is going to help lead you into sand shots, which Randy is going to talk to you about next.
We're going to go over the sand play, the fundamentals, the setup keys, and how to achieve distance. But first, we feel that having a good sand wedge is pretty darn important. The standard sand wedge loft would be a 56-degree loft with anywhere from about 10 to 12 degrees of bounce, sometimes even 14 degrees of bounce. And when we talk about bounce, we talk about the back edge of the club being a little higher than the leading edge. And this is what gets you out of the sand, for a better lack of words. So it's real important that you do have a good quality sand wedge so you can make those good sand shots. I'd say as far as your setup goes, it's extremely simple and it's not too much unlike your pitch shot. The only difference is we're going to move the ball now more forward in your stance. And we feel just off the inside part of the left heel is just about right. And three major things happen when you do this, when you move the ball forward. Number one thing it does is when you move the ball forward, the club is going to open. Now sometimes people do like to open the club prior to taking their grip, which is just fine. We feel that's a very individual thing. In fact, it can help you with some of these high shots over lips because the ball is going to go a little higher. So once again, that may be an adjustment that you can make on an individual basis. But once again, the ball being forward, the club's going to open. And when that happens, you've now exposed the bounce into the club, okay? Because the club's open, now this edge is going to get used instead of your leading edge. And what that does is it actually makes more of a skipping type motion through the sand versus a digging type motion with the leading edge. But once you've got the ball forward, now the second thing is your weight is automatically going to be forward, which is important because that's now going to put your contact just behind the ball, which is what you're looking for. And we hear a lot of situations where you need to take 2 inches worth of sand, or look 2 inches behind the ball, or take a dollar bill's worth of sand. Those things right there that you hear with the ball forward and your weight left, it's going to occur automatically. So we would rather that you look at the ball, but have the thought process of maybe just throwing some sand out onto the green. Okay. The last thing that's going to happen now is the club is going to be, I would say, fairly steep. It's going to be on a line, I would say, where the butt of the club does point somewhat inside your target line. So automatically it's going to be fairly steep, and your path will be as such where it's a little bit outside the in, which you hear a lot about too, people telling you to swing outside the in. But all these things happen with one simple setup key of moving the ball forward. I'd say as far as your alignment goes, you always want your club face though to point at your target. Okay? The swing itself can be best characterized, we feel, by letting the arms swing down the shoulder line. You might feel more of an arm motion going back, and then let the hips turn through. That's how we would describe the swing itself. And once again, all the while, you're just throwing sand out onto the green. That's sort of a good visualization or thought that you could have prior to hitting your shot. I'd say as far as distance goes, just remember the distance is controlled through the length of your finish. You watch all great players out on tour, any tour for that matter, if they have a very short shot, they're going to have a short finish. And everybody's feel for distance and length of finish is going to be different. But if they have a fairly short one, you can bet that the finish is not going to be much more than this. And I'll hit a short one for you. You've got the good setup where the ball's forward, and just a short finish. And I'd say keeping the backswing somewhat long is real key as well, because you want to make sure that the club head has enough momentum to work through the sand. In other words, if you went short back and short through, you would never have, I'd say, that needed momentum for the club to go through the sand. Plus, that's how most misses occur in the sand. As far as a long one goes, it's just the opposite. It's just a little bit longer finish. Once again, everybody's somewhat different. If I was hitting a long one, kind of make a little test or a little dry run by the ball, just feeling a little bit longer finish, and just making a longer finish, and you'll see the result. Once again, this is something we feel is extremely important but not practiced very much. A good way for you to get used to the sand and be familiar with it is to get in there before you play. Spend maybe 5 minutes, or at the very least 10 to 15 balls out of the sand prior to your play. That way when you get out there on the course, it's not unfamiliar to you and you'll be used to it. Practice these tips and your sand play should improve. Kyle now is going to talk to us a little bit about the full swing.
Hi, I'm going to go over the setup of your full swing, how to practice once you get back home, and then what to do if you run into a little trouble once you get back home. And I'm going to touch on a couple of things here to start with your setup. Remember, with your full swing, with your actual swing, you've got your own swing keys that you need to stick with. Everybody's a little different there, so everybody's got different keys. But the setup can pretty much apply to everybody. Everybody wants a good solid setup. So to start with the grip, pretty simple. There's a couple of things you want to remember. Number one, how your hand hangs down to your side. You can see I'm a right-handed golfer, so I look at my left hand. How it hangs at my side, it kind of hangs at an angle. That's the angle it's going to go on the club. Okay? And then my right hand goes right on underneath, matching my left. Now, in both hands, I want to make sure that I have the club in the fingers of my hands. And then when I know I've got that correct, there will be an angle between my arms and the club, just like this. That means the club is in the fingers of my hands. Okay, so that's the grip. Make sure you take care of that first, because if your grip is incorrect, you can make the best swing in the world and you'll mishit it. So take care of that grip first. Ball position, this is going to vary with different clubs. I'd say from your sand wedge up through about your 5-iron, the ball's going to be pretty much in the middle of your stance. And then once you get into your longer irons and woods, it's going to move slightly forward in your stance. Just makes it a little easier to get the ball in the air. With your posture, you want to stand a distance from the ball where your arms are hanging under your shoulders and the weight's on the balls of your feet. This gives you good balance during your swing and also just gets you in a good athletic position to hit your shot. Also, try to make sure that you bend from your hip sockets and not your waist. A lot of people bend from their waist and it's not a real athletic position to hit your shot from. Bend forward from your hip sockets this way. Now you're set up to hit it. You're in a good athletic position to hit your shot. Plus it takes a little stress off your back. Okay, so that's pretty much the setup, the basics of your setup. Remember, you have your swing keys that you need to work on that are at the beginning of this tape. They're also on the chart, and that kind of leads me into how to practice once you get back home. What I would do is first of all, if you're hitting the ball well, I would go play or work on your short game. I would spend as little time as possible on the range if you're hitting the ball well. If you're hitting the ball well, spend time on the range to get loosened up before you play, and then go play or work on your short game. Now, if you're not hitting the ball well, what you want to do is take the chart that we gave you to take home with you, and look on that chart. There will be a section in there for your setup, for your backswing, for your downswing. First of all, go through the part with your setup, check your grip, posture, ball position, things like that. Go through that, and make sure that's perfect, and then hit some shots. It may have just been a little something in your setup that was off. If you're not hitting it well after that, go to your backswing keys. There'll be some drills there that'll help you with those keys. Now spend some time hitting balls thinking about nothing but those backswing keys and those drills. There's a good chance you'll hit it better after that. If not, go to your downswing keys and those drills. By that time, you should be hitting the ball better. If you're not, give it a break. Go get some water, work on your short game, come back and do it again. A lot of times you're just trying too hard. So that's kind of how you want to go through your practice once you get back home if you have trouble with your swing. And remember, you have the chart, you have this videotape with your personal swing keys at the beginning, this review at the end, and you can always fax us, email us, call us anytime, and we'll be more than glad to help you out. We'll get back with you within 24 hours, and we have your chart, your video on file if we don't remember your swing right offhand, and we'll get you squared away with your swing. So don't be afraid to get in touch with us. We want to stay a part of your game. We enjoy